Well, it's been a while, but I have had other priorities. Um, that sounds really mean. What I mean is, I've been doing a lot of non writing and reading related creativity. I've been building things in the back garden, and I've been reading a lot. And this is the first review of three for books that I've read in the last 2-3 weeks. And it's also the longest book I've ever read, which will probably make some of you laugh, but at 689 pages, Paradise 1 is the longest book that I've ever read. Now, I have owned this book on my Kindle for about 6 to 8 months, and it was recommended to me by a bunch of other indie and trad horror authors and readers, because it's very much what you would call probably standard sci-fi horror fare. So you have a situation where there is a lieutenant in an organization called Firewatch, and think of them as sort of an FBI type, cross between the police and the FBI. And she is basically seen as a Nepo baby. Her mother was the director of Firewatch before she was forcibly retired, and shipped off out the way, and nobody really has any respect for her abilities. And the new director comes in, Director Lang, and she follows up on this by basically calling Petrova, who is the main character, a screw up, and she wants to send her out the way on an important mission for a while to clear her head, but really she's just trying to get rid of her. And there is a colony called Paradise 1, and they haven't heard from Paradise 1 for 12 to 14 months, and they want her to go with a small crew and check it out. So there is Petrova, there is Zhang, who is a doctor with his own troubles, and their pilot, Sam. Now, they're going on board the ship Artemis. It is a transport ship, and it involves them going into cryosleep for a while because it's a 2-3 month trip, and during that trip they have to pass through an artificial singularity to get there, and that screws around with the body. So they go into cryosleep. Every ship that they have has an AI basically running it, and it also has a robot on board. Now, the robot in question here is Rapscallion, and he is what I would imagine wit-wise if Spike from Buffy was a robot. That kind of witticism, sarcasm, that's the kind of thing I get when I read it. Now, Rapscallion is an AI as well, but he has the ability to just build a new body with 3D printers. If one gets damaged or he fancies a different look, he can just move from one to another. And he can also occupy multiple bodies at the same time, although it splits his bandwidth in half each time he multiplies. When they come out of the singularity and they arrive in the Paradise system, they're immediately under attack. And everybody wakes up screaming, bloody, everything's on fire, everything's exploding. And it sort of goes from there, and the AI is taken offline, so they have to sort of try and fend for themselves. They are under attack at one point by sweet potatoes. I can't really sugarcoat that or make that make sense to you if you haven't read it, but they are genuinely at one point under attack by sweet potatoes. I'll let that sink in. And we learned that a bunch of ships have been sent to make contact with Paradise 1. None of them have been successful, and the crews have been overtaken by something that they call the Basilisk. Now, it is I won't say what it is as such, but it infects the AI of the ships which then passes it on to the crews and gives them a different fixation. So on one ship, all they can think about is that they're hungry and they must eat whatever they can in whatever manner they can, even if it means eating their own body parts. On another ship, it'll be that they're unclean and they must wash and they must scrub themselves to death, essentially. On another ship, it'll be something else. And all of this combines, they have to try and get to the surface of Paradise 1. And it involves many different ships, many different things in the dark, all these things. As I said, it's the longest book I've ever read, 689 pages. In my opinion, it could have been 350. I see this criticism of the book a lot in reviews and in thoughts of other readers, that it's too long. It's a decent book, but it's too long. There's too much padding, there's too much filler, there's a lot of repetitive scenes going on. And the whole book, this is kind of a spoiler, but not really. So if you want to avoid everything spoilerish, then don't listen to this part. But at the end of the book, called Paradise 1, after nearly 700 pages, they only just get there. I was going to say they didn't get there, but they did in the end. But the ending of this book doesn't exist. So it's the first in a trilogy. 2 books are out now. I'm reading the second one as we speak. The third one's due out in March 2026. But there isn't an ending. There isn't even like a cliffhanger hook to go like dum dum dum. There isn't any of that. It's just mid-scene, it ends and it just says to be continued. And I don't like that. But yeah, I mean, the book was enjoyable. It was very creepy in places. The horror factor, I think, is more psychological than physical. There is a lot of bloody bits. But in terms of percentage of a sci-fi horror that is actually gooey, it's relatively low. It's more psychological aspects of fear and terror and all the rest of that. Couple of good twists. But yeah, it could have been a lot shorter. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. I am 3/4 of the way through the sequel, which is not as good as the first one, but enjoyable enough to probably read the third one. So I can recommend it, but be aware that it's very long and a little bit repetitive. But yeah, it's fine. Good traditional sci-fi fare. But it could have been better. And, I should point out, it was a collaborative effort. Yeah, in the afterword of the book, he says his name's on the cover of the book, but it was a collaborative effort. Like, the editors came up with 2 of the characters, and then somebody else came up with another character, and then they basically just asked him to piece it all together and give them some drama. And you can kind of tell that when you're reading it, so yeah, if you're going to read it, be aware of that. But it's still worth a read. You know, I enjoyed it enough. I didn't like blow my mind, but I enjoyed it enough. Anyway, I'll stop rambling now. And I read a couple of good novelizations. I bet you can't guess who they were by. I have to keep watching the next reviews to find out.